Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my show, The A-Side. I'm your host, Riley. Cleanly shaven, once again looking like I'm actually 16 instead of looking 30. And today I have a very special review for you all, because unlike the Uses review, this one's going to be actually really positive. We're going to review the 1982 classic album, Power, Corruption, and Lies by New Order. Now, the story of this album goes back to a band called Joy Division. And Joy Division was a post-punk band from the 70s that basically defined the genre. And when lead singer Ian Curtis tragically passed away, the band members kind of picked up the pieces and continued on as New Order with Bernard Sumner's on lead vocal. And really, I prefer New Order to Joy Division. I know a lot of people don't, but I much prefer them. I think they're more interesting with the sounds they play with. And their first album was very, very similar to the previous Joy Division album, Closer. Very, very post-punky. And over time, they would get to a dance rock and new wave sound, which I think they perfected on their 89 album, Technique. But it was on 1982's Power, Corruption, and Lies where they first kind of started putting these new wave elements in, a lot of synths and dancier beats and stuff, and I think this is their magnum opus. A lot of people would say Technique is their best album. I do love Technique, but I think this album is superior. I thought the track listing was on the back of the record. It's not. But it is a very, very solid album. And you may know songs like Age of Consent is the big track off of this album. But the album overall has this very interesting touch of melancholy on it. It's a very sad album in most places. And I think the melancholy is really what makes this album so great and so relatable in so many places and very, very, very emotional. It really brings and provokes the feels from you. And it's something that's also very introspective. When you listen to it, you tend to think about your life and the things going on in it. To get into the track list, to keep this video slightly structured, it opens up with the track Age of Consent, which you've probably heard. And it opens with this really great bass line from Peter Hook, who some younger viewers and people who aren't really in the music world might recognize from the newest Gorillaz track, Aries, where he played the bass. He's probably one of my all-time favorite bassists because his bass is so recognizable. He tends to play in this higher register, and the bass is played as more of a lead instrument than a guitar is. And it opens up this track with a really great bass line, and then it layers in the synths and the guitars, and then Bernard Sumner starts singing over it. And it has just a very, very beautiful song. It has that melancholy that this album has, but it's one of the more upbeat tracks on the album. And it really is one of the best openers of the 80s, up there with songs like In Between Days from The Cure's The Head and the Door. Really an excellent way to open up this album, showcasing really Peter Hook carrying this band, and Bernard Sumner's really sad vocals. And I think the way his voice sounds, how soft it is, and it really helps bring out the sadness of the music and the melancholy. I think he's the perfect choice for a band like New Order. And I like Joy Division, don't get me wrong, but I never thought Ian Curtis was the best lead singer, God rest his soul. I much prefer Bernard. And then it goes into We All Stand, very, very solid track. And then another highlight, The Village, which is a very, very good love song, believe it or not. The least melancholy out of all these tracks. And probably the most upbeat. It kind of bops with the electronics and the synths on it. And very, very good lyrics about love. You know, our love is like the flowers, the land, the sea, and the hours. Like, that's genius. That's some good writing right there. And there are like these high-pitched synths that almost sound like bells. They might be bells, I don't know. After the chorus, dum dum dum, and they're really cool. That's one of my favorite parts of the song. And it really It's a good song. It bops, honestly. 586 would be the next track, and I also really like this song. It kind of has the sinister feel to it at the beginning when it opens up, which is something that's not really felt too much on the album. Like I said, this album has a lot of melancholy and sad vibes to it, where this opens with this really sinister vibe, and it's a nice change of pace for the album. And it actually is an early version of a song New Order would eventually release called Blue Monday, which is a huge hit for the band. You've probably heard it. It was used in the Wonder Woman 1984 trailer. Even though I much prefer the finished version of Blue Monday to 586, I think 586 is really cool and still brings some cool things to the table. It's not, of course, a straight up, same thing as Blue Monday. There are different things going on. Just a very similar beat. The dun 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 dun, and like the vibes are very similar when it starts to get going. But 586 has, like I said, some more sinister sounding synths and stuff, and electronics that are very dissimilar from Blue Monday, but at its core, they're pretty much the same song. Like I said, 586 would go on to be Blue Monday. And if you haven't heard Blue Monday, it is an all-time 80s classic. You really should listen to it. And then it goes into Your Silent Face, which is another really melancholy song, and I think Bernard's vocals really, really bring that out. And I think really the most melancholy part is, once again, Peter Hook's bass when that comes in. You really feel the sadness through the bass, and that's something very interesting, that his bass can bring so much emotion despite not being a voice, And not to say instruments can't bring emotion, because they do, but I think Peter Hook's bass, especially on Your Silent Face, brings more emotion through an instrument than almost any other song I've heard. The man is extremely talented, and I think that's the highlight of the song. But I also really like the really loud synths on the song, too, that are just booming the entire time, especially the really low synths. Makes my record player shake when I play it. And you can hear the bouncing of my needle and stuff while listening to the song. And I don't care because it's so good. It is a very solid track, but the bass still stands out as the best part. And then going into Ultraviolence, which is a song that what I have taken from it, it's on the edge of a failing relationship. Whether it's about a failing relationship as in lovers or friends, it's not necessarily clear, but lyrics like all these years go by and I heard you calling and everybody makes mistakes, even me, make for a really interesting song with kind of animosity toward this other person. And Bernard Sumner or Peter Hook, whoever wrote the lyrics, I really should research these things beforehand, really is not a fan of this person anymore because they're very mad that their friendship or relationship is ending. And probably rightfully so. I mean, you wouldn't be happy if one of your friendships ended either, especially with someone you've been friends with for so long, as Bernard says in the song, after all these years. And then it goes into the instrumental track, Ecstasy, which is also really good. It really shows how talented all these people are. And the thing with instrumental tracks is you can really tell how good the band plays on an album without the lead singer. Now, I kind of hate instrumental tracks, but a song like Ecstasy really sells it because the band is so talented. Peter Hook's bass is the best part of a New Order album, and that is on display. Peter Hook kills it on this song, and that's what makes it fun to listen to, whereas with an album like the newest 1975 album, not so much. On that album, really most of the interludes aren't even played by the band, and there are like 10 of them, which is ridiculous. On this 8-track album, there is one interlude, and it has some of the best instrumentation from some of the best players of all time, When you have Peter Hook doing one musical track on his bass, or instrumental track on his bass, I'm sorry, that's fine. And it is a really good instrumental track. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It is 4.5 minutes. But it goes by really quick because, like I said, everybody is so talented. The synths sound really good. The bass is amazing. The guitar is good. It is just a very solid instrumental track, and I think it's pretty underrated. I don't really hear people talking about it. This album's pretty underrated overall. I think in America, a lot of people don't talk about New Order as much as they should because they really are a widely influential band, and especially this album is really good. It would go on to inspire so many new wave and post-punk ideas and bring about new sounds for the new wave idea. I mean, 82, new wave was still fairly new at that point. You didn't have The Cure were still doing goth stuff at that point. Pornography they had just put out. They hadn't gotten to Head on the Door, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. You didn't have all these huge new wave bands just yet. It was still a fairly new genre, and New Order came in and innovated. And even their influence still is felt today. The Killers, which I'm sure many of you love for classic songs like Mr. Brightside, were hugely inspired by New Order. Their first album, Hot Fuss, is pretty much a New Order album made in 2004. It's very similar if you listen to them. And their name, The Killers, actually came from a New Order music video where New Order pretended to be a fake band called The Killers. There's a fun little fact for you. But this album ends with the best song on the album, Leave Me Alone, which is the band's introspective look at how they felt after Ian Curtis died. It's a very emotional song and has the most melancholy on the album, but it's so beautiful, and it's a really poignant way to look at grief through the lens of a person who's dealt with it. It looks inward at Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook, the band in general, how they felt when their friend died at the time, and how they felt in 1982, 2 years after it happened. The line, 1,000 people in the sea, I see 1,000 people just like me, are some of the most beautiful opening lines of a song ever. And when you're sad and going through grief, how sometimes you just need to be alone and need to sort out your thoughts. Leave Me Alone is an absolute beautiful song and a testament to how good this band was and to how much they really loved their friend and bandmate Ian Curtis. It's the best song on this album. It's my favorite New Order song. It's so melancholy, so introspective, but so intelligent and beautiful and poignant, and it is a perfect song. Leave Me Alone is amazing, an amazing closer, and if it wasn't for The Cure's Untitled, it would probably be my favorite closing song of the 80s. It really is that good. It is a masterpiece of a song. And honestly, Power, Corruption, and Lies is a masterpiece of an album, which comes saying a lot for a band like New Order, who's had a long career with multiple good albums such as Low Life and Technique, two other amazing albums out of the 80s, but I don't think either of them come close to Power and Corruption and Lies, which throughout its 8-track runtime is so cohesive and so tight the entire time, just super tight musicianship. I feel like the band never messes up. There's not a moment where this album is dull or missteps. You're engaged the entire time. Everything sounds good. The writing is on point the entire time. Peter Hook's bass is amazing as always, but especially on this album. And everything just comes out perfect. Honestly, if you've never heard Power, Corruption, and Lies, listen to it. It is one of the best albums of the 80s. And like I said, very underrated in America. And very underrated, honestly, overall. A lot of music enthusiasts, such as myself, see New Order as being a really amazing band. But when people talk about greatest albums of the 80s, they throw out The Queen is Dead, Disintegration, Doolittle, Slippery When Wet, Appetite for Destruction, which I guess are, especially those first two I mentioned, are amazing albums. I haven't listened to the other two. But out of all the acclaimed albums that get thrown around as the best albums of the 80s, Power, Corruption, and Lies does not get thrown around enough. Because this album is amazing. Honestly, Power, Corruption, and Lies, I'm feeling a 10 out of 10. Listen to it. It is a pretty much perfect album. Now, as for what I'm doing after this weekend I want to get up a review on the newest 1975 album, Notes on a Conditional Form, because I have thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on this album. And I wanted to get a classic review out first of something really positive, because Yeezus wasn't really a super positive review. And this next review, spoiler alert, it might not be super positive. So I wanted to get something in, an album I really loved, and obviously an album I just gave a 10. Of course I'm going to really love it. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. One of my friends recommended me listening to Hobo Johnson, so at some point I'm going to get around to that and review those albums. She told me The Rise and The Fall, I think, were the names of the albums. Thank you for the recommendation, by the way. I will listen to those at some point in the coming weeks and review it. Hopefully the 1975 review will be up this weekend. And yeah, thank you for coming. This has been the A-Side. I'm Riley. Tell your friends, subscribe, comment that you watched the video if you have an account, and if you're from Twitter or real life, tell me who you are so I can say hi. So yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you all in the 1975 review.